welcome. This is Shanna with Caffeinated Craftiness, and thank you so much for joining me today. Today is all about the new Inkon3 colors. They are so adorable, and I am making a new Slimline surprise slider card with them with a cute little snowman to boot. This is the first one I made. We are going to make a complete second different version. So grab a drink, sit back, and let's get crafty. The new Inkon3 colors are Sharktooth White, Trinity Teal, and Sweet Petunia Pink. I'm also going to be using their Juicy Embossing. This is the Trinity Stamps Surprise Slider Card dies. It also comes with 2 zipper pulls that you can use for a fun tear out feature as well. I'm going to be using the Slimline Snowfall Stencil, the new Trinity Stamps Happy Snowman dies, and their Snowmobile stamp and coordinating dies. I'll be doing the entire project with the Canson XL watercolor paper. I like the watercolor paper for my interactive card today, mainly because I'm going to be doing a lot of ink blending and saturating that paper, and it's a nice heavyweight card to handle the interactive portion of the dies. So my first piece is cut to 4 by 12 just to allow some wiggle room for the die. And I'm going to start by ink blending the Trinity Teal color onto the card. I use an actual full adhesive post-it note to help protect my fingers from getting too inky. Over the course of the video, you will notice they still get quite a bit of ink on them because I tend to be messy when I craft, but it does help from getting those finger smudges all over places I don't necessarily want them. I did speed it up because ink blending, all I'm doing is using just a sponge applicator and a circular motion, so I didn't think it was necessary to keep it in real time, otherwise this video would be a lot longer than it is. Next, I'm going to come in with the Sweet Petunia Pink and just add it to the bottom edges of the card. This adds a super pretty purple when you mix the Trinity Teal with the Sweet Petunia Pink, and I really liked the shading effect it gave to the base of my card. Next, I'm just going to come in with some clean water and a paintbrush and flick some off an acrylic block onto my card just to add some extra texture to the card. And then I'm going to come in with that Sharktooth White after dabbing off all the water and stencil over the entire panel using the Trinity Stamps Slimline Snowfall stencil set. I have the hardest time saying that today. I'm actually only going to use one panel. In my original card that you saw at the beginning of the video, I used one panel for inking, and then I actually used the Arctic White embossing powder from Inkon3 and their Juicy Embossing pad for the second layer. 2 different looks. I did want to stick with the muted tones this was going to give me though for this card. So as I peel it away, you're going to see, especially where I have it darker with that purple and on the edging, you get those snow spots. Super cute with the Arctic White. The pigment shows up really well. Now I actually am just going to flick some more of that Arctic White, just watered down, onto my card as well for some extra smaller snow spots. Matte, and I am going to move on to my next panel. This panel will be the tag portion that you pull up. So I do want to color it just so because you're going to see it underneath when the card tints up. So I am doing the Trinity Teal over most, probably about 2/3, but then I'm going to come in with that Sweet Petunia Pink and get that nice bright pink across the top portion for some contrast. In the middle, I'll blend them to that beautiful purple. I really can't talk enough about how much I like this purple. Purple is one of my favorite colors, and this is such a pretty shade mixing these two. So here we have a blooper. I wanted to take that same Sharktooth White pigment ink and splatter it on. I grabbed my mop brush and not my stiff flat brush for this, so those huge water spots were the result. Not necessarily the end of the world, but wasn't the color the look I was going for. So first I applied more ink over it, and then I just opted to do a wet wash over the whole panel, and it turns it into more of a watercolored look. Still very beautiful and very versatile. I heat set it really quick with the heat gun so I could die cut it next for the tag. The tag for the surprise slider dies, are open-ended, so you can adjust the length to longer if necessary. I didn't need it longer for this project, but I could see where it could be useful in others. Just quick taping the top of my interactive card down, and now I'm going to put my snowman on the card die, or cardstock. Trying to get all the pieces in that I'm going to use on my card so I can die cut them all at once so I have them available to color. I'll die cut all the pieces off screen and come back showing you this open-ended tag. I'm going to take off my tape, and then I'm going to take the tag topper die that is also open-ended. It only cuts 3 edges, and I will trim the top to a tag shape. I could have left it square. It honestly doesn't hinder the card design whatsoever, but I did want to show you the dies in this set are open-ended so you can adjust for different lengths. It makes it a super versatile die set. Go ahead and run that through my die cutter and bring it back, and we'll have all the pieces cut to assemble the card. So here's my tag. I like the little box shape, or like shipping tag almost shape. Next I'm going to ink blend my snowman pieces. So I'm bringing the main 3 pieces of the snowman body onto my glass mat, and I'm going to take that sweet petunia pink and a sponge applicator and just ink pretty much the entire thing. Essentially being a little darker around the edges, but I actually didn't mind the messy look to this. When you're ink blending on watercolor paper, you don't get that same smooth transition you do with smooth paper because the paper is so textured. So it tends to grab the ink a little differently. But for a snow scene, I find it to be actually kind of whimsical. It gives a little more interest to it. Gonna color the snowman's hat. This I'm not ink blending. I actually snagged my Copics for this just to quicken it a little bit, and I wanted some shading on it because it's such a flat die cut. So I'll zoom in here in a second, and I just grabbed some warm Copics. I think I grabbed W7, W5, and W3 to do my hat, and also the little coal pieces for the eyes and the buttons. As I color all the pieces for the snowman, I'm going to go ahead and give you some music to listen to, and I will add the Copic numbers across the top of the screen for added information. Then when we come back together, we'll assemble the card. So now to assemble the card, we're going to take that top piece that we die cut earlier and we are going to crease it along the score lines. The die actually scores the cardstock for us, so there's no math involved. This first part I score both ways so it has a little more movability when you go to slide your card back and forth. I'm going to do the same thing with that center fold, but as you will find out here in a second, my cardstock actually cracked. That's kind of common with watercolor cardstock, excuse me. All I did was to hide that was ink blend a little bit more over that crease. My snowman's going to cover most of that fold anyways, so I wasn't really concerned about it. So you can see right there it started to crack. And that's just because of the burnishing and the weight of the cardstock. So I'll come in with that sponge applicator. I didn't even re-ink it for this. I just used the residual ink that was still sitting on it and colored it in so you didn't have that stark white breaking up my colored panel. So to attach the tag to the sliding top piece, all you do is adhere the bottom edge to the bottom portion of that slide. I'm using just a tear tape here. You want a really strong adhesive to hold up to the interactive movement. So whether it's a wet glue or a tape, it just needs to be extremely strong. Lining up across that cut line, just straight across and centered, I want to make sure it has the movement. You don't want to glue any of the sides so it stays nice and free to move. You can see here how it slides back and forth. Next, we need to mount it to a card base. The card base for this size Slimline is 3.5 by 8.5 inches. My base right now is a little too big, so I'm going to trim it down really quick to exact measurements. I'll do that off screen and then I'm going to bring it back and we will ink blend the card base as well. The opening created by sliding up that top portion is actually going to show us the card base, so I wanted there to be some color. I'm going to take that Trinity Teal and the Sweet Petunia Pink again to stick, and I'm going to do that watercolor wash you saw me do earlier. I'm going to take it all the way up the watercolor card to have that little bit of ombre effect. Next, we're going to stamp and color the Snowmobile stamp and dies from Trinity Stamps. It's this cute little mole that's sliding on his belly in the snow, and it says Snowmobile. Happy puns right there. I will stamp it using the Inkon3 blackout ink, but I am first going to stamp the title, that Snowmobile sentiment, with the Sweet Petunia Pink. The Atelier inks actually stamp out really well too. I love them for ink blending and watercoloring. I tend to forget how well they can stamp though as well, so I did want to show how well the images. I still get a crisp image when I use these inks, and I love it. The colors are great, and it lets me coordinate directly with my entire project. So after my sentiment stamped, I'm going to come back with the mole, and I'm going to stamp him in the Inkon3 blackout ink. It is my go-to ink for Copic coloring. So after the mole is all stamped, I'm going to color him in both Copic and watercoloring. I've stamped both my sentiment and my mole on 110-pound accent cardstock, so this is not watercolor card, which would be a little harder on my Copics for blending. So I will put the colors down on the screen for my Copic combinations, and then I'll walk you through my watercoloring. So I apologize for being so low on the screen, but the idea will be the same. I'm going to take some of the Sweet Petunia Pink and the Trinity Teal and just stamp them onto this stamp block really quick. And then I'm going to take a paintbrush that is barely damp and I'm going to pull color directly from the acrylic block to my paper. So essentially I'm just painting, but I didn't add a lot of water because this is not watercolor cardstock. So I'm going to start with the Trinity Teal, and I'm slightly drier than I need to be, so I've got just a little more water on my brush, and you'll see it flows beautifully. It's kind of like coloring with a marker. You have to just kind of work it quick, but it does blend out just fine. I did my trim in the pink, and then when I'm kind of more happier with the colors, I'm going to actually shade with that purple I've spoke so highly of this entire video to give some dimension to my little mole. Blend it out just with more ink, not with more water. And my cardstock held up nicely. There's no pilling or anything. As long as you don't add too much water when you pull the ink over to your paper, you can generally do this on most cardstocks. I couldn't remember how close the die was going to cut out my mole around the snow, so I did take some cool grays really quick and just blend some shading down into them. I didn't really need it at the end of it, but I do like how it looks regardless. So now I'm just going to center my dies over and do a quick trip to the die cutter to go ahead and die cut these guys out so we can put the rest of our card together. With all my pieces cut out and ready to assemble, we're at the fun part. We get to put it all together. So you need foam tape to put together the interactive portion of the surprise slider. I took just one layer. I didn't need more than one, and it slides just fine. You're going to go around 3 sides of that top part of the card, being sure not to tape onto that tag so that tag can still move freely. After you have all your foam tape applied, go ahead and attach it to your card base. I just pulled up the edges of my foam tape so I could center, and then I'll finish pulling that release tape after I've centered and attached the card properly. After you've attached to the base, you'll see how well it slides back and forth just by pulling on the tag. We're going to go ahead and mount the snowman. Off screen, I glued him all together. I'm going to glue his eyes and his buttons on, along with his nose and his mouth, and then we will go ahead and mount him to the front of the card. Can we just take a moment to say how cute snowmen are in winter? Pink snowman, purple snowman, white snowman, I don't care what color snowman, they are all adorable, and this set kind of lets you customize your snowman. There's different faces and different arms. You can use the eyes, the buttons, you can mix the different a nose or coal or all sorts of things. Here I did like a big old smiling mouth with actually a little tongue even. Super cute. And then of course his corn nose. When you go to add on the arms, you want to make sure you only glue them to the snowman body. If you glue them to the edge of your card, see how mine actually meets the edge of my card? If I was to glue it, it's going to hinder the sliding mechanism. You won't be able to slide it back and forth because you will have glued it shut essentially. So just be careful where you put the glue and you'll be fine. So I lined up my snowman and I kind of eyeballed where that crease hits. So I'm only applying glue from that point down. Using a wet adhesive gave me a little more wiggle room where I placed him, and I just want to make sure I'm not gluing above that fold. Double checking, he slides back and forth and he's still a happy little mover. At this point the card is almost complete. I just have to decorate that inside part of the panel. This is where my snowmobile comes back. I'm just going to glue him flat because I don't want too much dimension under there because the slider would catch on that as well. So just a little more wet adhesive and some pressure to make sure he's nice and firmly applied, and the inside of my panel is now decorated. The top part of the tag that slides up is a good little spot to write messages and any type of other greeting you want to include on your card. I wanted to draw in the snow from the front to the inside too, so I just took my paintbrush and took it directly to that shark tooth white pigment pad and painted on my drops instead of stenciling or splattering it, because I didn't really want to get anything on the sentiment or the mole. I wanted to just be a little more strategic in placing them. Let me go straight to the cardstock. Close them, and here I decided I wanted some snowflakes. These are Trinity Stamps Snowflake Kisses. There's little iridescent flat sequin embellishments in the shape of tiny snowflakes. A lot of fun for winter cards. I'm a little off screen here, but I am just scattering them all over the top portion of my card, being careful not to glue over the sliding part either. That was the top of the tag. And to round off, remember we have all 3 new colors for Inkon3: Sweet Petunia Pink, Trinity Teal, and Shark Tooth White. Thank you guys for joining me. I hope you have a great day. Be sure to check out the other videos as we are collaborating between Trinity Stamps and Inkon3 in honor of the new release and Trinity Teal. Have a great day. Bye.